Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Welcome to Lost Voice Radio. This is John Studi, along with Jacob Nelson, who is forthcoming today on the show. We are having a little bit of technical difficulties on both ends. But it is also a live show, which means that you get to call us anytime at 844-801-6666, the access code of 914121. And on today's show, we're going to be continuing a theme that our good esteemed colleague Jacob Nelson started a couple weeks ago, actually. He was talking about the vocation of fatherhood. And today, Jacob and I decided that it would be a good follow-up to just sort of talk about parenting in general. And some of the theories that are out there, I've been working on helping my kids grow. As for those of you who don't know or don't recall, my wife and I recently adopted two girls, two girls of a young age, preschool age. I don't want to get into too many details, but there's some difficulty in their past, and adopting two kids that are older than my son as well has been a bit of a difficulty, obviously. As you can imagine, he's used to being the only kid, getting all of mom and dad's attention, and suddenly he's got the two older sisters who are in as much need of attention and affection and care as he is, if not sometimes even more. So, especially a younger girl is so clingy, so attached to me, and the older one's starting to develop that kind of personality onto you too. But in any case, one thing that I just cannot stand doing is moving forward with something without doing a whole lot of research on it first. Well, it kind of depends on what that is. With this radio show, for instance, I did ask for no research to move forward on it, which I'm sure you guys, as many of us know, to some extent in the last year or so of listening, for all of you incredibly faithful listeners. But when it comes to really serious things like the faith, school decisions, work decisions, things that deal with my kids especially, I still want to mess with it. And I want to make sure that the choices that I'm making are extremely well informed, not only by my own research, but also by those who are more informed than I am in whatever field that I might be looking into. And what I've found over the last couple of weeks here is, or last couple of months here, is that parenting is a tough thing to research, and there's a lot of decision that you have to make. A lot of times you have to make a flat-out decision that's based on your own reasoning, your own guidance, your own intuition, and that's framed within your worldview. Obviously, it's all got to be well-informed and all that stuff, but, man, I have all sorts of research that is in one way contrary and another way I think we're being phone tapped by the government.
No, it's just me, your co-host.
Oh, my co-host has finally joined us. I'm glad that you got on.
Talking about finally joining 3 weeks later, Studi, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. A little bit tired.
Missed you.
I miss you too, Jacob, so much. I miss adult interaction. Oh, yeah. My goodness. I can't even tell you. It has been so ridiculous. I mean, literally, I can't even tell you some of the things. Actually, last couple of weeks, I have had irreconcilable work conflicts and difficulties with, getting some of my homework on time, and family issues. The kids have been sick,
right,
and had to do therapy appointments. It's been wild.
You know what?
So,
life happens.
Life happens a lot. I mean, especially when you're kind of living one, it just kind of continues being its thing.
Right.
Which is great because I prefer not dying. In fact, I made a bit of a mistake maybe a couple days ago. Speaking of death, I have one kid who is okay, I have 2 kids who are total screwballs, and one
at work, not your actual kids, right?
I mean, not my actual kids. My kids are perfect angels that never do anything to drive me nuts. But one of them was brushing their teeth. And, okay, when I was younger, I had made a terrible mistake. I was eating peanut butter on a spoon, and I slipped and fell, and the peanut butter on the spoon jabbed me in the roof of the mouth. Very painful. Well, from what I remember, I think it was more scary than painful. But either way, it jammed up into the hard palate, and a couple of, I can still feel a scar, like half an inch back, it would have gone into the throat area, and honestly, it probably wouldn't have cut anything. It just would have scraped it.
Right.
Either way, not the best. But anyway, so there was a lot of bleeding, and I had to. Well, actually, one of the great things about it is I got to eat Freezy Pops for quite a bit because they helped numb my mouth, and I loved it. It was delicious because those are some of my favorite things. But anyway, when I went to the doctor told me about a girl he knew that was brushing her teeth, and she was goofing around, and she fell over, and it actually seriously injured her, if not killed her. And so when I saw my daughter, trancing around with her toothbrush in her mouth, obviously I freaked out. This was kind of defining moment in my life. One of them died. And I called her, and I just told her, but hey, Dad stop that. Dad knows somebody who died from that. And then afterwards, she's like, I don't want to die, and she talked about it the whole day, and even the next day too. And I'm thinking, ooh, well, I freaked her out. Well, to some extent, she kind of needs that. That's one thing I've been finding with her is that she is very spirited and very willful. I been reading a great book called If Aristotle's Kid Had an iPod.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It is, and one of the things that I really appreciate about it, and I agree with them too, is that we often hear about the strong-willed children, et cetera, or whatever you want to call it, the ones who are very defiant and want to be in control and be your boss and all that jazz. Well, the author of the book here, what's his name? See, I got it right here in front of me somewhere. Oh, there we go. Anyway, so the author says, well, that doesn't make sense at an Aristotelian point of view. Conor Gallagher, he's a doctor of philosophy over at the Catholic University of America, actually. But he says that a child is defiant and disrespectful and rude and won't comply with his parents isn't actually strong-willed, actually very weak-willed, because they're unable to rein their passions in accordance with the reason that they're supposed to be following. And they're also often not properly accepting or guiding their mind to the real goods. They're usually focused on the apparent goods that are directly in front of them.
Right.
And that's one thing I've learned with my youngest girl is that she needs a lot of love, a lot of affection and everything, but in order to really get her to behave and respect you and to even grow and be happier, what I've noticed is that I got to be really firm with her, and she has to feel it in one way or the other. So, and especially learning the right way to do it too, because with punishments and all that jazz, you can't just you can do timeouts or time-ins and take away privileges and toys, but it's kind of hard for kids to connect the behavior with the punishment or the behavior with the disciplinary action if they're not somehow connected.
Right. It has to be proportionate in both what it is and how much of whatever. Wow, there's 15 tons of snow that fell off my office roof past my window. I hope everybody below is okay.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
That was so irritating. It was miserable. Because Molly and I, we have one of our shovels broke and totally just snapped off. The handle snapped off when we were shoveling, and then the other one cracked, and so the rest of it was really difficult to get through. And the difficulty is it's I'm not going to try to call one of my friends and say, hey, can you bring me a shovel in this horrible weather where people are dying? I mean, it wasn't that bad.
I would come to you, Studi.
Oh, I know, Jake.
I would bring you a shovel.
You have a shovel?
I do.
Oh. Do you guys have
for those who are not in Minnesota, we got 2 feet of snow over the weekend.
Not more. My son, Michael, he jumped in. We went to go play outside, and he jumped off the deck, and not realizing how deep it was. It was like up to his chin.
He got lost.
He was so upset. Yeah, yeah, he did. The other 2 kids were, that was hard. It was hard because we had the kids in basically the entire weekend. Because it was snowing like crazy outside, and all 3 of the kids, if they were outside and it was snowing and it was blowing in the face, they would have gotten really upset. And even though they were trying to see, we're going to go outside, and it's not like we can drive anywhere either.
Right.
I mean, like snow plows are coming off the roads so that way wouldn't slip and fall. Because the best thing about it for you listeners who don't live in Minnesota is the night before it had rained a ton and then froze overnight, and then 2 feet of snow on top of it.
Yeah, it was fun, but I still would have brought you a shovel.
Thanks, Jake. Well, I'll keep that in mind.
Anything for you, buddy.
Hey.
But anyway,
to a super late mass.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were talking about punishment or discipline. I like the idea of discipline better than punishment because discipline actually forms character and teaches.
Right.
And in order for discipline to be effective, the discipline has to be proportionate to the wrong action done in both scope and what the thing is. And we were going to talk about that today with discipline and parental boundaries and everything. 2 weeks ago, I talked on fatherlessness and the crisis of fatherhood, and you had some things that you wanted to throw in on that as well, which would be most welcome. And then last week, I talked about a little bit with the pornification and everything of our media, and at the same time, the complete lack of personal boundaries with privacy things of social media and all of that, and how those things are in some ways intertwined. And so, all of this comes back to the family, and John Paul II was so clear on that. I would like to just throw out there that we are live, and if anybody does want to chime in today, you can call in at 844-801-6666, and then access code 914121. So feel free to call in today. But John, do you have anything that you want to start off with fatherhood and parenting and that kind of stuff?
That's kind of where I was going with it. Because I remember now we were talking about doing boundaries. And I mean, with fatherhood, there's obviously your primary vocation is to serve up and know the Lord. And when God calls you to the family life, recognizing the ultimate good for your kids is also going to be the ultimate good for all men, which is going to be the encounter with God. And so the number one thing that dads need to do is be an example of the life of prayer, and to be an example of spiritual leadership in the family. And leadership doesn't mean obviously demanding and bossing people around or whatever, but it's giving that example and being that servant heart that shows your kids what kind of character and what kind of goodness can come out of a daily life of prayer. And for my own personal prayer life, I think that I definitely need to improve upon this, but I think I pray with my kids probably 3 times a day. And one of the things that I've been working on them with is having prayers which get them involved with God and in communicating to Him, but understanding Him as not just like, a giant Santa Claus in the sky or
some great big ball of being.
Or some great, sort of. I told my daughter said something along the lines of, my son on Sunday, we went to mass, and he isn't quite tall enough to see over the pew, and so he was on the floor, and he wanted to stand on the kneeler, which is a no-no. And he said, "But I can't see God." And then my daughter brought it up the next day, and I got a great Michael story for you in a second here.
Perfect.
Get a good line. But then my daughter brought it up the next day, and she said, "Yep, Michael couldn't see God." And then I'm like, "Yep, you can't see God. He's invisible." She's like, "Yep, he's really way, 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 really far away, way up high." I'm like, "No, so he's really far away. He's not here." I'm like, "Actually, he is." He's closer to you than you are to yourself. And God is everywhere, but nowhere in particular. And I just kind of get the sense there. I love doing that to my kids sometimes, just kind of like throwing something at them that's just like way, way beyond their level of comprehension and seeing how they react. Sometimes they surprise me. One of the something Michael surprised me with was last night we were eating dinner and we had noodles and peas, and my son said, "More noodles, peas. Daddy, can I have more noodles, peas?" And so or noodle peas. And so obviously he was trying to say he wants more noodles, please. But I wanted to tease him a little bit. And so I said, "Michael, I'd love to get you noodle peas, but I just really don't know what noodle peas are. Could you please expand on that for me?" And he said, he's like, almost without missing a beat, he says, "Green beans." And I'm like, all right, those are noodle peas.
Hang on, I'm having some issues here.
Do we still have you, Jacob?
Go ahead.
Okay. Anyway, I thought it was hysterical. But regardless, like I was saying, I want to have the prayers form the kids. And so what I do with the girls especially, and I think Michael can probably start doing it now, is I have them always say thank you to God for something, recognizing that everything that we have is ultimately dependent on Him. And also have them ask God for help with whatever they might be struggling with. And what's interesting is that even though they're praying publicly and are clearly aware that other people are hearing them, you actually get to see something of their inner life that they don't otherwise reveal to you, which has been fascinating. Like one of my girls says thank you. It's just really cute things like thank you for my perfect life with my new family. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's fantastic. And she's kind of prone to. She's sometimes prone to saying those kind of things, or sometimes the other day she said something like, "Thank you God for making me new," and I'm like, well, "What are you talking to me about?" She's like, I'm a new person or whatever. I'm not going to say her name, and it's just you get some really profound things from them, or you can hear like, "Help me God not to be scared," and then when I'm talking to them about that, when I hear them say that, and what I'll say to them is they say, "Well, I'll call her Lisa. Lisa, yeah, you're praying to God to be scared, but, God doesn't just want you to not be scared. He wants you to be brave." You know what I mean? And then you talk about, like, what does it mean to be brave? And then what I start seeing is that they start praying for the opposite virtue, or the virtue that they need to overcome their difficulty.
Right.
And start learning about it that way. And so the prayer, life of prayer itself, can be a way of helping discipline them. And whether that be through prayer, through direct verbal instruction, or like punishments and whatnot. One of my favorite ones it's been all these actions that I take with the kids are ways of teaching them the boundaries of life and the boundaries of what it means to be a good human person, and understanding that there's certain ways that they engage with different people in different relationships and different social situations, and how they manage what's going on their inside, with the feelings and with their frustrations and the words they want to use. Discipline really is all about boundaries, because that's what it's doing. It's setting you up and molding you into the image of Christ, according to the kind of person that you are in yourself.
Well, the boundaries, they establish the kingdom, right? So John Paul II talked about shame being a boundary experience. And so, Adam and Eve in their original nakedness had no shame. But it was only after they crossed the boundary of rebelling against God and His design that they experienced shame, which John Paul relates as a boundary experience. And as I alluded to last week, and we're talking a little bit this week, when boundaries go to the wayside, so does discipline, so does being a self-starter. So many of these things that we deem to be values or characteristics in well-formed individuals go to the wayside, because whether people see it or not, and whether kids admit it or not, young people actually crave boundaries, and the reason why so many of them act out is because they don't know where the boundary is. They don't actually know how they're supposed to act in a given situation, and so they act like a wildfire with no fireplace as a boundary, and it goes everywhere.
Right.
And so those boundaries become very important, and so to establish clear and firm boundaries is one of the chief ways parents can train their children in virtue.
Right, and that's with there's a book called About Boundaries, and I think that they delineate it between personal, professional boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And then, from there they'll, do it between coworkers and boss, and there are various kinds of relationships. But I think that one that they forget about is the spiritual boundaries, which is the most significant, but also requires some of those other human skills in order to actually be efficacious with it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've noticed with my with the girls that we have is that they came with quite a bit of lack of stranger danger. Young one especially would just literally walk up to anybody and give them a hug, just
mm-hmm.
randomly. And they should do that to my boss, and my boss was very gracious about it. But what I've been doing with the kids is he's hugging me like she's a cute little girl. I'll stop and I'll say, do you know the person's name? And they look at me, no. I'm like, why did you hug them? I wanted to. Well, what if they were a bad guy? What if they took you? And not but to scare them, to a little bit, because there does need to be a knowledge that the boundaries are there to keep them safe, and that we only offer affection like that to family, especially
mm-hmm.
in their situation. And so one of the things that I've been working out with the kids is that having very, very tough boundaries with personal relationships. Who can you hold hands with? Who can you touch? Who can you hug? Who can you kiss? And what I've noticed is that having those, like you before, they were just completely wild. It was kind of a wildfire of
mm-hmm.
emotion and affection and talking to people. And now the younger one was standing in subway the other day, and she looks behind me with this guy, or a while ago she just would have started trying to have a conversation with him and ask him if she can go to his house. She hid behind. I was holding her. She hid behind into my chest, and then she pointed up above her head and said, "I don't want make that guy go away. I don't want him." And then she said it loudly enough that he heard it. And I told him, "I'm sorry about that. This is actually an improvement." And she did it again not too much longer after that, when she was with me at my youth group then, to one of my youth group kids, and for my teenagers. And I think to myself, well, as a teenager, I want him to go away too, but I have to. But you have to be here. So there's been a huge improvement with her on that. The other one, not quite as much. But it's been a very healthy thing for her to be able to develop those strong relationship boundaries, because what I've noticed is that she's been developing a more genuine attachment to us than kind of the, I'm not going to say manipulative, but disingenuous survival attachment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and when the personal boundaries at home are established and they're clear and they're firm, and that's the key, is that boundaries have to be clear and firm. If boundaries are moving, or it's not clear what they are or where they are, then that doesn't actually have the same effect. In fact, kids will then look at the world as if boundaries are simply personal preference.
Right, and it can even be a thing of fear for them too.
Right. So when boundaries are clear and they're firm at home, that predisposes the child to actually engage their world in a healthy way, to form proper attachments and proper relationships, because they have the security and safety at home that they can always rely upon.
Right. And it's that safety piece. You're right. That's been a huge things for the kids, is helping them understand, because they've had a lot of different homes that they've been in, and so having them know that there is that this is a forever thing. It's been great. In fact, the other day, on Sunday again, all three of the kids were just cuckoo bananas in church, and they all got time-ins or talked to or whatever. And one of them kind of got her harder than the others because she was, misbehaving a little more. But afterward, after I came back in, and I missed communion because of it. After I came back in, I was telling her, hey, kiddo, I love you. I'm gonna love you forever. I'm never going away. I'm never sending you away. And then for 20 minutes, that's all she talked about. She was rubbing my face and looking at me and giving me a big hug and said, "You never leave, you never go." And oh my gosh, this is great. And it's not the first time and I think this is the second time she said something like this. But the first time was more like a realization for her. We were at a baptism, and we had gone to the bathroom, and when we came out, she said, "You never leave." And at this time, whenever she said never, the word never, it was always followed by some sort of negative thing, you never loved me, you only loved the other person, or you're I never get to do X, Y, and Z. And this time it was, "You never leave." I'm what do you mean? She's "You're never going away. You're always gonna love me." You're right. That's exactly the case. And then to have her kind of go as hard on it, or as emphatic on it, like she had just done, was really, really sweet. And she's the one that I'm probably the hardest on by far, in part of because she has the most behavior issues. But regardless, those boundaries have been something that I think that have endeared her to me, or endeared me to her, and they've also helped her make it feel very safe, even though she gets extremely frustrated with it. And I get frustrated with boundaries sometimes too, but I know that's going to make me a lot better for me.
Well, we should probably make a little disclaimer that we are not child psychologists. This isn't our area of professionalism.
I was doing the same thing, actually.
But we have extensive experience working with youth and young people through our career and studying these things through philosophical inquiry and theology and all kinds of stuff, and just understanding the human person. So, any advice or anything that we say is obviously not representative of WCAT Radio, the Apostles, or any affiliated thing. Did we have our lawyers check this over?
We can't. Yeah, actually, I do have a lawyer. It's more or less it's basically our opinion based off of our work experience, like you said, but also philosophical reflection. So it's just going to be based on our understanding of the human person and the development of children. So, but I have some study in child psychology. It was my first major coming out of college, but I did not complete that degree. So, I can tell you, I kind of wish I would have gone back to do it.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But in any case, yes. But
what else is new with you, Studi? We haven't done a show in a while, and we haven't been able to really talk in a while. I love the way that the boss man, Dr. Mahfood, writes about our show on the webpage, that we have just general camaraderie. And I think that's what sets our show apart from some of the other WCAT shows. So,
what was that?
I think that's one of the things that sets our show apart from some of the other WCAT shows.
Is that we goof off?
That we, well, I was going to use a more professional term that Dr. Mahfood uses, which is general camaraderie. But
right, yeah. I mean, I think I actually chose that phrase in the description. Did I? I don't remember.
I don't know.
It was a long time ago. It was a year. We passed our year anniversary.
Hey, happy anniversary, Studi.
Oh, thanks, Jake. I loved it.
I should get you some flowers.
Oh, that'd be great. I saw a study about 3 years ago that said that the majority of men would appreciate getting flowers from the wife. I'm I don't really think I'd care.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd care much about getting flowers.
See, for me, when it comes to gifts, there isn't a whole lot that I care for that I'd be like, oh, I like this little trinket or this pretty thing to look at. I want something that I'm going to use, or it's going to make sense to me.
Yeah, if I get sawhorses, it's way better than flowers.
Totally. But actually, though, it'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Well, or stuff for my kids too. I mean, one thing I would love, hint, listeners, is if you want to make a major contribution to the show, is I'd love to get a plastic playhouse for the kids, or something for them to climb on. Oh my gosh, my younger two are just insane monkeys.
Let's just walk this back for a second. You want a plastic playhouse, or do you want the circular saw, the sawhorses, and the wood to build a playhouse, and then you have those tools forever.
I think I want that, Jake.
Yeah. See.
Because that sounds fun too. Yeah.
We got to make our Lost Boys castle too, by the way.
What was that?
We have to make our Lost Boys castle.
Oh, that's right. Are we going to be doing that in the bay? Oh, yeah. We talked about doing it on my stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, we probably even soundproof it too. Just put some egg styrofoam or egg foam stuff up, and we can say it's both egg carton foam. It's both for protecting the kids as they're bouncing around in there, but it's also to help the sound get muffled. Heck yeah.
Yes. I love it. I have some other ideas. For your castle. Just so
Do
you know.
Cool. We should talk about that sometime once our ceiling job is done.
Yes. Also, just so you know, I have a circular saw now because of things keep breaking at the house. I had to go buy one.
Oh, boy, that's inconvenient to have to be forced to go and buy new tools.
I know. I hate buying tools. It's the worst.
I love having tools around.
Right?
For a while, I was looking at for the first 2 or 3 years.
This is why the ceiling project keeps getting delayed, right? So you can just keep my tools at your house for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's also caused me to take some of my tools out too, and find them again. But
right.
But there's just so many uses for all the tools that I have, and realizing that I could have done so much more. For instance, the cabinets upstairs. Mm-hmm. I wanted to buy a level and some other stuff, and there was my manager, my boss at home, didn't want to spend the money on it. And I'm like, okay.
Your boss at home.
And so I did it by hand. Now the cupboards aren't exactly well put together in every way possible. And same thing with the floor tiles. There's an issue. The tool I wanted to get with that too, but it's like, it's going to cost an extra $25, and it's going to take more time. And I'm like, okay, and then it doesn't turn out as well. And some of it's really true too. Is when I do a job, I don't always approach it with the greatest plan in mind. I just kind of go at it and figure out as I go along. And that's I don't know. Well, it's partly it's very symptomatic of ADHD. Secondly,
I know that.
98% of my life is that way, and it turns out fine. Most situations.
Right.
So
I do have to say, to your credit, you don't let the difficulties of ADHD stop you from doing remarkable things.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
Put that pin in your hat. Put that little feather in your cap.
Ooh, I like feathers. Yeah, I just don't mean it can suck. It really does. Having ADHD, it's not fun at all.
Yeah.
But when it comes to ADHD and boundaries, the biggest thing is trying to develop boundaries within yourself and developing those habits. And what I've learned, and I got to get better at this, and especially being more formal and intentional with it, just like you got to do with everything else, is that developing a routine is practically the only way you can actually get stuff done and have a more organized, systematic life. Because to just sort of will yourself into developing a new habit if you have ADHD is practically impossible.
Yeah.
It absolutely positively has to be something that's incorporated into the whole of your daily routine or whatever it might be. And then it's developing a daily routine, which is also extraordinarily hard. It's just crazy.
But you know what? Even with all of that, you built another incredible bridge from nonsensical ramblings to going back to boundaries with ADHD. And
that's because my brain has no boundaries. I can bridge any gap, no matter how infinite.
You have an infinite brain? That's incredible.
I do, and only moderately useful. Actually, that does drive me nuts, because I have a high IQ, but with ADHD, the functionality often diminishes. And so there's so often what you'll see with individuals who have who are highly intelligent ADHD people, is that they'll have these sparks of just like brilliance.
Yeah.
But then otherwise you would know there's anything different about them. Or they make a lot of really silly mistakes. I certainly make a lot of silly mistakes. One of the things that drives me nuts the most is just like the missing details and not paying attention to the right thing. And then like 90% of the time if I don't get something, it's because I tuned out at just the wrong moment. But well, anyway, developing boundaries within myself. Oh, Jake, you're doing this on purpose, aren't you? You're showcasing me. You're like, oh, look at this person who has a disposition to, having a hard time with executive function and, self-governance and all that jazz. And I'm going to exploit that for the sake of the show so I can talk about it. And
no, Duty, that sounds so diabolical. Do you really think that I would be capable of such a thing?
I would expect much worse from you, actually, Jake, so I'm kind of disappointed that I haven't seen.
See?
You're right. I should have thought that one through.
Yes. No, speaking of boundaries and stuff, though, I've been just reflecting on my own prayer life because, when you work for the church, prayer can become difficult because you're constantly steeped in theology and philosophy and all this other stuff, and so personal prayer life sometimes becomes difficult. And one interesting thing I've noticed since changing jobs is moving from maybe one of the most hideous churches I've been in to one of the most beautiful. And I definitely find myself going down to the church to pray, but it's really hard to be in the same building as where I work and be able to separate enough to be able to really pray when I know I have a bunch of stuff on my desk or phone calls to return or emails to write.
Right.
And so, while the beauty helps and the parish culture improvement helps, it still really comes down to establishing those boundaries of committing to doing what I'm going to do each day and trying to build that up. And so, morning offerings. Right now, you'll be pleased with this. I'm rereading The Great Divorce by C.S. Lewis and just using that as kind of a spiritual commentary to reflect on my own life. And so just really trying to commit to self-imposed boundaries in that way.
Right.
Because prayer doesn't just happen. It's something that you have to be intentional about and make happen. And, if like you and I as fathers are the image on earth of the Heavenly Father for our children, then we have to actually live out what we are hoping our children do, which, that's a high noble calling, and it's a weighty one. But, at some point, it has to just happen. You have to just be intentional about making those boundaries and being very disciplined in keeping them.
Yes, and this is, again, reflecting on my own experience. I think that one of the difficulties with ADHD is that everybody sometimes has symptoms that sound like ADHD, or will have various aspects of it. And then think like, oh, it's just an excuse for the person who is actually diagnosed with that brain difference. But one thing that I know about myself is that when it comes to building up a new habit or routine or being accountable, there is a lot of difficulty that I have with having that internal motivation, that internal governing. And so, and the Bible actually offers this advice too in Micah, I think.
Your brother-in-law?
No, yeah, my brother-in-law. Habakkuk, actually. There you go.
Okay.
Is that when I make a goal, when I have a goal, or something I do, I always have to externalize it. It cannot be something that I just simply have within me. And so, whether it be, trying to develop a new routine, I need to put like a picture on the door or a word, or have it be a buzz reminder on my phone, preferably something I can't, ignore. So my wife, who will make sure that it gets done. But in order to develop many of these boundaries, especially the internal boundaries, I have to have some sort of external template. I need to have some sort of external guide or fence. And this is Habakkuk. It's in Habakkuk 2:2 actually. The Lord speaks to Habakkuk, saying that he says, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. And then a little bit later it talks about writing these things down so that people can see it. And it's that being able to see it as something that's outside of you, that's a rule that imposes itself upon you rather than a desire or something that's merely a product of your will, helps cement those things in more firmly.
Well, that's why things like whether it's professional counseling or working with a spiritual director or going to confession, is to verbalize, to write down, to make real your thoughts and your feelings, concretizes it and makes it something that's actually conquerable or something that you can overcome or improve upon. Because when it just remains in your head, it's just kind of out in space still. And this isn't part of being made in the image and likeness of God, is that when God speaks, because he's pure act, there's no potency in God. As I like to say, God has no potential. When he speaks, a thing necessarily becomes. It necessarily comes into being. And so when we talk about Jesus Christ, the Word made flesh, that God's Word is spoken and Christ comes, it makes real that plan of salvation for man. And so for us, when we're working through things in our life, when we are establishing boundaries for ourselves or for others, to write them down, to make them real and not just our thoughts, is what actually gives them the power to come into being.
Yes, no, this is absolutely the case. And a part of what makes it come into being isn't, I grew up in the Prosperity, Health, and Wealth Gospel Church. You get this ridiculous notion that whatever you receive, whatever God places on your heart as a desire, you claim it and you receive it by faith. And so the way that you're supposed to talk about it is like, God wants me to have a Bentley or whatever, and so you start confessing. It's like, my Bentley is this color. My Bentley, I got it here. My Bentley, I got a great deal on it. And you just kind of confess these things over and over, and it's practically like it's supposed to be like magic almost, that God will grant these things to you because the power of your word gives life to it calls forth things in existence, those which were not, like Paul talks about Romans or whatever the phrase is. They basically gave the ability to create ex nihilo to humans, which was not an uncommon thing. They believed in divinization or theosis like we do as Catholics, but they took it to an extreme, whereas we believe in a participatory divinization. They believed it as a quite literal, we become gods. We partake in his nature to the point of becoming him and having the same power and the same rights as he does, which is insane, and nothing short of idolatry, obviously. But so it's not to say that we make those things happen, but rather we change our thought patterns. And as I think we've talked about before, thought patterns form the foundation, basis of how we build up our actions, whether it be the words that we speak or the life decisions that we make. They are all determined in some way or another according to how we believe. What do we believe is the most valuable? What do we believe is something we're striving for? What do we believe is worth suffering for? And what kind of things do we believe are worth undergoing in order to obtain certain goods? And how do you make those kind of action? What kind of action will you take? I mean, there's all sorts of examples of how we're going to be accountable, or how we're going to be choosing our own path, and how those things can be changed simply through, like you're saying, using our words and taking a better confession or a different way of speaking of things.
Right.
changing our thoughts. So that spiritual boundaries when it comes to church work is definitely very hard. One of the reasons why I had hardly ever come to Mass at my current parish, or even my last one too, and beyond the fact that it's far. I mean, it's a half an hour drive, and when I have a hard time getting kids to church on time, I'm not going to deal with that. I don't want to take the time to yuck. But the bigger problem is that when I come to church, I'm already on. I'm here not to take care of my family or lead them in the faith, let alone obviously worship God, but I'm here to work in some way, shape, or form. And the best way I can work would be to worship. But the difficulty is that kids coming up and talking to me, and they've got questions about youth ministry events, and I have to promote it. And if I waste an opportunity while I'm out here at this parish, I'm losing a time that I can recruit somebody for something or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and so I mean, even with that, it's establishing that proper boundary, because it's a good thing to be seen, to be present in the life of the parish that you're working in, but to have that boundary established where you do go to a place where you can be re-energized, recreated, where you get filled up so you can go back and give even more.
Right.
And that's really the role of boundaries in general, is to make sure that we're having healthy relationships and healthy events, just different things, so that we have the proper amount of energy and emotion and time and everything else to give to them, so that we can be whole in all that we're doing and not be drained in the things that we're doing.
Right. And that's a part of the difficulty with working in youth ministry, is it's hard to. I've been finding it easier recently, but because you're often almost like on call for emergencies, or there's always like one other little thing that you can do or need to do, or an email you need to send, or something you got to think about and plan for the next week or whatever it might be. It's really difficult to break or to make the separation between home and work.
Right.
And so even going home, I'm still thinking about that, and that detracts from my ability to take care of my family as well.
Yep.
But the hard thing is, like, I'm working for Jesus here, and so my thought process is that I'm offering something to God, and that my wife is fine. She's just watching her TV show or reading or whatever it might be, and then like I can go over here and do this by myself and work if she's busy. But the better decision would be to say, hey, I can put off to tomorrow. It might be a little bit more crunched or maybe even late. But the more immediate important thing is if my wife's reading or watching TV, I can just go down and be by her.
Well, and I think work and life boundaries are interesting in that regard too, because your primary vocation as a husband and father is to help your spouse and your children get to heaven, to provide for them, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially. And so that does mean that you have a healthy boundary of how much work you do and when, so you don't get consumed by your work. But the other side of it is if you don't give due attention to your work, and in order to give ample time to your family and all of that, then you might end up not doing a good job or losing your job or things like that, and then you're not providing for your family. And so
and therefore not
you can err too far in one end or the other.
Yeah. And it's always that golden mean, or that virtuous mean that you want to look for, and then it's always going to be times, obviously, where you have to lean one way or the other more so because of the circumstances. Like when the girls first moved into our house, I practically couldn't do anything. And it's certainly impacted my everything outside of family, but it was necessary.
Right. And that was a necessary good. And with that, if you have the healthy relationships that you've established around you with those good boundaries, and then you communicate to them what's going on, more times than not, they're okay with that kind of redispersion of mental, emotional, physical, spiritual energy. Because that's what's needed in the time to take care of your family. And ultimately, every job should be oriented towards family life.
Right.
Because we are made to work, but God's first command was to be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
That God gave Eve to Adam and Adam to Eve to be partners in paradise, and working and taking dominion over the earth is for the sake of the family, not the other way around.
Yeah, I think we often miss that. I saw a video this morning. And this is insane. I've mentioned this before. In Minnesota right now, I think that my daycare costs about, we do $220 a week.
So math is happening.
Yeah.
Math is happening.
Math is happening?
Yeah, you're doing math.
Oh, there's a math like church. Yeah, so it's almost $12,000 for me to send my 2.5-year-old son to daycare, where he puts
just
together
for your
puzzles
son?
and paints. Just for Michael.
Holy cow!
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. That's almost as much as my entire degree at Holy Apostles. It's like $60. It's more or less like maybe $2,000 shy.
Wow.
Regardless.
Which says two things. One, how expensive daycare is, and two, how inexpensive a great education at Holy Apostles College and Seminary is.
I know, right? That does highlight it actually fairly well. It's cheaper to send. It's a master's degree, so that's.
We don't have sponsorships, but this radio show is only made possible through Holy Apostles.
This is very true, and even if it wasn't, I would still advocate Holy Apostles.
That's true.
Good school.
It is.
A lot of good folks there. And so, the three people who aren't already affiliated with Holy Apostles are probably now Googling and saying, "Oh, what's this Holy Apostles thing? Why is it so great?" And they'll find out. Maybe. But what was I going to say? But it's just ridiculous how much that is. And then now you got two girls. One of them thinks they have a scholarship, and school isn't as terribly expensive for sending them to Catholic school. And it's still spending, mind you.
Right.
But you practically need another full-time income to send 3 kids to school on top of what you already have. And so, for me, the part of the difficulty is trying to figure out, do I continue working full-time in ministry, or should I get some sort of part-time gig and or something just online and take care of the kids during the day?
Well, Michael, he'll be going to pre-K soon, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. He might even be able to start school early. That's why he can already he recognizes several letter sounds and can write mom.
Yeah. You haven't told me about the writing, but you did tell me about the letter sounds.
Oh, yeah. He wrote M-O-M the other day.
Nice.
And that spelled mom. And I'm like, oh, yeah, wow. That's
Matthias is crawling mightily. He's 8 months as of Sunday, and he's been crawling since Good Friday, and he's lifting himself up onto his feet and teetering on his feet, but he's clearly not happy with just crawling. He wants to walk.
Oh, yeah. How old is he now?
8 months.
Oh, yeah, he's getting pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be there pretty soon.
It's exciting.
Himself up is going to be the first thing. And then, of course, it's gone. The hardest part about the crawling or the walking is that now his hands can be free. And so some of the things that were limited because he had to have his hands on the ground are going to be within his reach, and they got to change everything.
Right.
And then once he starts climbing, you guys are going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, that is the hardest part, is keeping them climbing, because it's developmentally appropriate for 2.5 to 4-year-old age. Or they're going to want to climb everything, and not having anything to give them nothing that's appropriate. How get it really. I'm personally okay with them jumping off a chair onto the couch, no big deal, or jumping between their beds or something along those lines. That's fine.
Yeah.
But I would much prefer it if there was this is the jungle gym you guys can play on.
Right.
In fact, I've been thinking about building something along those lines, or that you can have indoors too. because it's hard to really give them an appropriate place to express that indoors. And over the weekend when it snowed a ton, something that I did was I actually made an obstacle course for them. And it was designed to burn them to death, or to burn them out, basically. And what did I have them do? I had them, and this teaches them boundaries, too. Obviously, you know, I'm being a parent, and I'm showing them here's an appropriate way to play and burn off your energy in the home, as opposed to, like, climbing on stuff and chucking things, fighting like they were doing. I'm
not seeing a problem with that option, though.
What?
The chucking stuff and beating each other up.
Oh, well, I mean, it teaches them, you know, about life.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess it's that. But, what I had them do? Oh, I had them hop like a frog on a bunch of, like, couch cushions that I put on the floor, which is a little bit tougher, and so they had to do full body motions. Then they had to grab a spoon with like a plastic egg in it and walk slowly with one hand on their head and one hand holding it all the way up the stairs. And if they didn't get it, if they fell off, they had to start over from the stair that they dropped it. Had them come down, go through a tunnel, and then I set up a like a laser wire trap thing with a rope between a bunch of chairs, and they were having to crawl and move through it, and then if they touched it, they had to start over because the spider came to eat them. Eventually, that started scaring two of them, the idea of the spider, especially when the oldest found this little big picture of a spider and hung it right up there. But then at the end, they had an Easter basket, and they had to be the Easter bunny, and they had to take the Easter basket and hop across the basement to the stairs. So with it, and the Easter basket had like 5 pounds in it, and so they're doing like a bunch of squats while hopping, and then they had to carry it all the way up the stairs, and that's how they finished.
I love
it. I got
it.
to do that for like 45 minutes.
And you set boundaries for the rules of the game, and they abided by it and had fun.
And had a lot of fun.
And if they didn't abide by the rules, then people were upset, right?
Absolutely, and it strengthened them.
There you go. See, we came full circle.
We did. Jake, it's been good. It's been great to have a whole. I mean, we missed 3 hours. We missed 3. It's really about 15 minutes of like talking about stuff, and then about 45 minutes of obligatory nonsense. So we've made up for that, which is much more important than the other stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's really for the obligatory nonsense that we actually learn things. Did you hear my obligatory nonsense last week because I missed you so much?
No, I didn't. You should shoot at it.
All of America is actually cultural appropriation because we don't actually have anything that's truly American. Apple pie is Dutch. Hot dogs are from Germany.
Oh, that's fine.
Tacos are from Mexico. Pizza's from Italy.
I saw a map on Facebook about all the different pastas in Italy. I should send you that.
You should.
But Jake, guess what?
What?
We have like a minute.
That's sad. This hour sure went by a lot faster than the last 2 times I did the show.
It did.
It's hard monologuing for an hour on your own.
It's like dragging your teeth against a nail file. You ever done that? It's horrible.
No, why would you do that?
Because I have sensory curiosities.
Interesting. Well, that does bring us to the end of the show, Mr. Studi.
I'm sorry.
It's been a pleasure. If any of you want to agree with how much of a pleasure it's been, you can email us at lostvoice@wcatradio.com. My name is Jacob Nelson, along with my good buddy, Mr. John Studi.
God bless, my friend.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.